The case we're speaking on today, I found out about by reading one of the, Swedish crime magazines that you find floating around, and it just spoke to me because it was so horrifying. It's about the murder of the 24-year-old school teacher Signe, and it was called a lustmord, which translates into a crime of lust. Yeah, it's not a very pretty tale, so be warned. And now, let's get into it. It all started one summer's eve. It was raining almost like hail down upon Signe as she was riding her bike. She had been to a dance hall, which was the usual festivity and hookup place for the young people during summer, and she had had a good time. She was a very pretty girl of the standards of the day and had plenty of admirers at her beck and call. She was biking fast through this terrible rain. She only had a few kilometers left to her parents' house where she was sleeping because she was on summer vacation from her job. Well, it's not a vacation if it's where is it? I don't know really, but she was home visiting her parents in a city called Närke, at least, over the summer. But while she was forcing herself through this late summer rain, she had no idea that just a few meters ahead in a ditch, two young, extremely intoxicated boys were lying drunk and, well, completely out of it. Well, yeah, these drunkards, these drunk young men were 17 and 18. They were smithy apprentices, if that's what it's called in English, I'll say that. And their names were Erhard Karlsson, 17 years old, and Elis Wallin, 18. How did they end up completely wasted in this ditch in the rain? Well, maybe they were trying to find a place to sleep. Sleep that drunkenness off. To that, we also must note that they were not in the happiest of moods. They had plans to meet up with two young ladies that evening, and they did not show up. They were the girlfriends of said young, drunk boys in the ditch. So they were lying there. They had been hoping for some skinship for that evening. So frustrated and drunk, they were just lying there, squabbling, trying to decide what to do for the rest of the day. Or night. Well, it was evening. But for them, the evening was young. Erhard and Elis, as young as they were well known around the neighborhood and the town that they did not say no to a drink. They spent all their wages on spirits and pornography. They didn't have much respect from the townspeople and were seen as ruffians. And we will soon find out that, yeah, they indeed were. And ruffians is just a very nice way to describe them, actually. As the boys were lying there in that ditch, miserable and sad and feeling a bit downcast for being dumped by their girlfriends that evening, suddenly they saw the pretty young Signe far off with her bike coming towards them. Erhard, the one who was most awake, followed her with his eyes and decided to suddenly, acrobatically jump up from that ditch right in front of Signe. And she was shocked and scared, to say the least. Erhard, he jumped upon Signe and threw her off her bike. He was much bigger than her. From that point, he dragged her down into the ditch to do, well, you can guess. But Signe, who was not drunk, she did get a very hard fist to her face, and that somehow roused her so much that she got away from Erhard and jumped up from the ditch, took her bike and started biking as fast as she could away from the site. It was too far still to her parents, but she actually had an acquaintance who lived in a house very much close by, and she set her sights on going there. It was just a few 100 meters away, so she must have thought that she could easily bike fast as heck down there and call for help. Problem was that now the other drunk boy had been roused by the ruckus, and it was described as a fire rose up within him, and he too jumped out of that ditch and somehow managed to run and catch Signe on her bike again. And the two men took her and dragged her into, well, a forest next to the road. When they had forced her into the forest, they started to beat her senseless, but Signe was not having it. She clawed at them and bit them and left lots of traces upon the young men's bodies. When they tried to put a piece of cloth into Signe's mouth to make her not make so much noise, Signe started trying to calm the boys down, saying that she would calm herself down and not do anything if they just stopped hitting her. This made Elis and Erhard for a short while stop the abuse, and that short while they were drunkenly thinking, Signe again ran away from them, and this time she actually got to the house that she was aiming at, and she ran. She got as close as to the stairs up to the door. When her legs gave up, she fell over, and soon Elis and Erhard once again were there and dragged her away. But not far, they just dragged her into a more secluded part of this house's yard. Statements then say that the two boys started arguing about who was gonna get to do the graping of Signe first. Sadly, the people inside of the house, judge and his wife that knew Signe, they heard some ruckus and some shouting, but they thought it was wildcats and they were getting ready for bed and did not think more of it. Signe was now at the total mercy of Erhard and Elis. The both men, boys, took turns in using and abusing Signe. They tied a rope around her neck and strangled her. While doing that, they also used a knife to stab her multiple times and ripped off her clothing. When the boys were done and the life had petered out of poor Signe, they went out into the night with their scars and bite marks all over. Both boys went home. It's said that one of them actually even went to his girlfriend's house and did things there, right after doing the terrible, terrible thing that he had just done. And they both fell asleep in comfy beds. The next morning, when the sun was rising and the maids at the house where Signe was trying to get help woke up to do their daily chores, well, they went out into the yard and started screaming that there was a drunk, naked man lying on the grass outside on the lawn. The judge who lived there, he just sighed. This was like, well, a drunk man passing out on my front porch, whatever. So he went out, but he quickly saw that this was indeed a badly beaten, stabbed young woman lying there. And it didn't take long for them to see who it was. Signe was taken into a morgue. It's said that when her mother saw her, she fell down crying, stroked the hair on her daughter's head, and even said, "Jag tror ändå att mördarens föräldrar har det värre än jag." Roughly translates into, "I do think that the murderous parents are having a harder time than me." The search for Signe's killers wasn't a long one at all. They found her coat, and beside it they found a handkerchief that belonged to Elis. So they quickly went and took him. And then they found a few witnesses who had seen Elis and Erhard together, drunk as heck, that night, so they went and took Erhard too. Since they were known as village idiots, no one was very surprised, but still, they just couldn't imagine them doing that kind of thing. Anyway, so basically, yeah, the boys were taken quickly into custody, and there was no doubt of who did what they did, but they tried to blame it on each other. But the police weren't having that, neither was the people living in said little town. There was kind of a lynch mob outside a police station. They wanted to kill them. Yes, they wanted that. But it was only Elis that could be sentenced to death, because he was at least 18. Erhard was only 17, and so yeah, he got 10 years of hard labor.
And I've got to say, in all honesty, it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Which is basically nothing for what they did. It was such a senseless, idiotic crime, taking away a young school teacher who had done nothing wrong. Elis would never get his death sentence actualized, if that's the word. No, he managed to take his own life before that. Well, one terrifying human less walking on Earth. The same thing could not be said of Erhard Karlsson Albison, as was his full name. No, he, after release, married twice and got extremely rich by buying and selling apartments, something like that. Either way, he lived for a very long time, rich, married, with a family, and passed in 1980 as a happy, rich man. Not the ending anyone wanted. Well, I guess he was just 17, but if a 17-year-old is so addicted to alcohol and pornography that they could even do such a thing, it's beyond, well, imagination. Rest in peace, poor Signe. Hope you enjoyed my little ramble here, just for you. I know I can have a bit of a hard time keeping a thread, but hopefully I'll be able to edit this into something that is actually watchable. But yeah, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being here, for supporting my channel. It helps so freaking much. Stay amazing, stay hydrated, and stay morbid. You're all my heroes. Mwah! See you soon!